Hello, today my name is Sasha Clark, and you're joining us for Human Design for Parents and Kids. Today we're going to begin something slightly different. Our listeners can now be viewers. My friend Jessica Ann is a magical human design expert and Gene Keys expert, and she and I are co-creating a series about profile lines. So you can also view this episode on her YouTube channel. I'll leave some information about that, how to get onto the YouTube in the show notes below. But thank you, Jessica Ann, for being here. I'm so excited to be having these conversations with you. Jessica is an elite human design and Gene Keys consultant who helps people to create energetically aligned lives where they can flow over force and develop deep self-trust and live their lives as sovereign CEOs. She works with high-powered CEOs and leaders to help people to build their confidence and live out their true life purpose in alignment with their design, follow their destiny path, and connect with their soul guidance, develop their self-esteem, and step into personal power so that they can reframe what's possible in their lives, which helps move from fear to freedom. She has high-level one-on-one alignment mentorships and programs to help people turn their gifts into gold, which is my favorite line about your intro, gifts into gold, and monetize their magic. So grateful that we are doing this together. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sasha Clark. I am a parenting coach and a human design specialist, and my job is to just help you enjoy that parenting journey, in all of turning all of the mundane ways into magical days. And I'm so happy to be here too. I am passionate about helping people to understand their children through the lens of human design. So it's pretty cool. One of the things we have in common is that we're both educators. Do you want to? So I'm going to talk. Jessica has, um, what is it? Several decades, 2 decades, two and a half decades worth of experience in the educational system. And so one of the things we nerd out about a lot is just how we wish we had the human design for every teacher and every parent in the whole world.
Well, it's crazy that you actually said that. I'm super excited because I've actually just decided today, and I've just set up the email. I'm actually launching a YouTube. It's called Educating Experts with Human Design
Oh,
for
nice.
maverick teachers, for unschoolers, homeschoolers, parents who want to understand how to educate their children because
Yeah.
it is still a deep passion of mine. And there is now what I know now about human design, it could completely revolutionize teaching and learning and how we can add to cognitive science and what we know to nurture the minds of the children and,
Right.
and get them to create in their own aligned way. Yeah, adding this knowledge is life changing.
Yeah, and it's such a, I mean, neither of these topics are mutually exclusive because when you train a child, what by train, I just mean nurture. When you nurture a child to feel comfortable with their own energy, no matter what system they're working in, right? Then as adults, they will go, if they're in a system where they're not aligned, they'll feel uncomfortable. But if we condition them to feel comfortable being uncomfortable, then they have to spend all this work deconditioning. So I'm super passionate about it as well. I think that whether they become entrepreneurs or whatever their path leads, wherever their path leads them, college bound or wherever, if they're comfortable knowing what their like true north is or what their actual energy is, I think it'll really be a set them up for lifelong success.
But I guess this is why profile is so important and why I really want to talk about profiles in particular, because profile gives us the role and the costume that we're here to play out this life. So it gives us a very clear set of archetypal energies and characteristics and qualities that you will recognize once you have a human design chart produced for yourself, even if you're a parent coming to this retrospectively as an adult. When you see the qualities and the attributes and the characteristics and the behavior sort of styles of the profile, you will say, God, that's me. Oh my God, you will know yourself. You
Right.
will recognize yourself. So it doesn't matter. It's something that is unchanging and really valuable because it allows you to step unashamedly and confidently with conviction into your role in this life and step in and shine, you know?
Right, exactly. That's true. So let's talk. I mean, for those that are new to human design and Gene Keys, do you want to share about like what exactly is a profile line? How do we find it in the chart? Why does it matter?
Okay, so today's episode is really going to be focusing on the 1-3 chart. In human design, there are 12 profiles, and each of those profiles are a combination of two lines. Um, Today, we are focusing on the 1 line and we are focusing on the 3rd line. How you find this in a chart is by looking at your conscious sun. On the black side, you're going to see a load of planets and you're going to see a black side. And you're going to see a number, which is a gate. We don't need to go into all this depth, but it's like, say, for example, mine is 54.1. And then on the other side, you're going to see a red load of planetary symbols. And that's your design side. It's what we call the unconscious side. And you will see another number, another gate. And that might be, for me, it's 57 or 51. I think it's 57. And 53. No, it's 57. And point and then a number, and that number will, for me it's 3. And so from that you get your profile, which is the 1-3 profile, which tells us I am here to be an investigator, a researcher, or the gift that I bring to the planet and through my life, how I express my purpose and my incarnation is through the role of the 1 line, who is the investigator, the researcher, somebody who's here to be an authority and build expertise and knowledge to serve the whole. Mm-hmm. And the 3rd line, who is here to mutate and innovate. I call the 3rd line the scientist. There's somebody, the 3rd line is an experiential learner. That person's going to move through life, learning through experience what works, what doesn't, through trial and error, so that they can then take that wisdom and teach others and or innovate or bring new ways to a field or a sphere and transform that. And so when we talk about mutation, we're talking about transformation. What is the role that that profile plays in the cosmic soup?
Yes, exactly. So like I always think of the line 1 as kind of like a librarian. I mean, like a huge resource of information that they've acquired. I mean, like sometimes I feel like my line 1 son, he's a 1-3 also. He literally has this encyclopedia of information about things he's passionate about. And you can ask him any question and he'll just pull it up. He's just like a walking encyclopedia. So and then the experimental side too, like I always think of the line 3 as like basically like a, well, why not? Let's try it, like let's just try it and see what happens. And so there's this beautiful, I think line 3s can get kind of a bad rap because they're always experimenting, never graduating, but on the benefit of that is that they never assume that there isn't something new to learn in a situation. So they're always open to that, like let's try it and see what happens and find out from the experience. So I do think that's lovely and beautiful.
But I do think it's really important to highlight and illuminate here that if a 3rd line isn't testing and trialing, then they're not mutating and they're stagnant and they're atrophy, because they can only bring the change that they're here to express if they are having that opportunity to make those mistakes and to learn from them. And, in human design, we can enter into things correctly and it can be a shit show.
So that's okay.
I hope children are listening. Because it was meant to be that way, to find the way through. But I'd also like to mention the role of the 3rd line is almost, and Ra uses this language, the anarchist, and I really, really resonate with that, because this can be the case in their career, in their sphere, in an area that they learn, or even in relationship. We have something called bonds made and bonds broken. And this is about the 3rd line being able to go into something. Does it work? Can this be transformed? Can it be adapted in any way? Can it be improved? Oh, this isn't working, and break the bond. And so they can get, Ra called it the anarchist. And I see it as a really beautiful choice of word, because again, it's about tearing down what isn't working to create the new. And that's really important. It's what evolution's all about. So if there's no 3rd line, there's no evolution.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point, that there's a lot of the language of Raw and other sources even, that it's like my mind judges the word anarchist so harshly that it's hard to really um like lean into what he was really trying to say, because I'm stuck on that word. And so I just want to encourage anybody that's new to human design, if you encounter, if when I encounter a I'll just put myself up as a role model because I'm a 6-2 and that's what we do.
Mm,
When I encounter a word that I don't like, I take that as a sign that it's something I need to decondition about that word, that I have some judgment about that. Um, because for again, back to the line 3, like the fact that they, even the phrase that I said, that they're constantly experimenting, never graduating from the process of experimenting. The way I said it a few minutes ago, my mind even was like, wow, that sounds so fatalistic. Why did you say that? So our mind is constantly judging the words we're saying and the words we're hearing, and assigning meaning to those. And that may or may not be exactly what was meant. What I really meant was that it's the part of the process of the line 3 is that they will always need to continually experiment. They will never graduate from their need to experiment, basically. I
mm.
wasn't saying they were never going to learn anything from it. It just could have
Yeah,
been how it sounded. So,
right.
and I also want to mention that I hear a lot of people. This actually just happened the other day. I had a mom reach out to me and ask if I could do a reading on her her teenager who just turned, I think, I don't know, 13, 14. And she just wanted to know if the human design chart would be able to help us figure out what, like, like, should he go to college? Should he go, what's he going to be when he grows up? And I believe that's a common question. I know I would have liked to know that question, the answer to that question when my daughter was that age. Uh, but the problem is that I don't believe the human design chart tells us, like, there's no one job that you could do or that I could do, because based on our human design. um because I'm a 6-2, I'm going to approach the what's needed for that any position differently than a 1-3 or a 5-1. And that kind of helps us to flesh out the relationship of the profile line with the rest of the chart, is that it's more like the costume you wear while you're doing the job, but the job,
Mm,
like you hinted at, what I actually do for a living is really something my strategy and authority and my relationship with my higher self needs to decide. It's not something that's going to be in black and white and red in a chart necessarily. There's no fatalistic, information in the chart, I don't believe. So I think anyone can do anything, obviously. I'm only 5'2". I'm not going to be a women's NBA basketball star, but within limitations, I could do anything that my strategy and authority says is a line move for me. What do you think about that? I wonder.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we shouldn't be narrowing down and labeling, using it as a labeling system and saying, this is it and this is that, and therefore it's black and white. What the profile will give you is information about how you learn, how you interact with other people, what qualities you bring to, or flavor you bring to the life of experience that you have, and how you express what excites you. So your career, depending on is really about depending on what your soul calls you to. So for me,
Right.
I'm a 1-3. I was an educator, which is, I'm a projector 1-3. So, I was actually invited into teaching, but I could have been a lawyer. I'm a researcher. Like, the
Right.
qualities I bring, and I was a researcher. I studied English literature and language, which is all about synthesis and bringing information together. I have a passion for cooking, but again, I could go deep into studying the science of ingredients and what flavors work well with each other, and which kind of produce, and investigating that in a very deep way doesn't mean that I'm going to not be a chef, and I actually was a chef for a while.
That doesn't surprise me. You kind of sometimes you remind me, the way your fascination with food palette or flavor palettes reminds me of Alton Brown. Are you familiar with Alton Brown? And when he goes into the science of why something tastes, I'm like, oh, that's Jess right there. I just love it. He's
Amazing.
great. He's amazing. And so are you. I just think you guys, like I said, you're a wealth of information, a resource, right, for the planet. It's beautiful. I love it. I learned so much from the line ones in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's really great because Karen Curry Parker from Quantum Human Design calls us the resource. So
Mhm.
again, in traditional human design, it's the investigator martyr. Karen, and I wanted to mention that about language that you were talking about. Karen Curry Parker, you calls us the resource. What's the third line?
Oh, I just went blank.
Let's see. I think I
I
might
know
have
it's martyr in Ra's language. What does she say? Are you gonna Google it quick? You're
explorer, the
the
explorer.
explorer. Thank you. Yes.
So, and her reason, so like myself, I came to human design having already had a spiritual awakening, having a Kundalini awakening. So I actually just, human design was designed or brought to the world by Ra, who wanted to shock the world into awakening and give them this science of awakening. And
Right.
so when he was bringing this 330 years ago, the language he used was very penetrating, very shocking, because a lot of people were living in their not self, as he calls it. Karen
Right.
Curry Parker had read somewhere about this. Was there an awakened I Ching? And she decided that she wanted to up because she's really deeply aware of how we co-create reality, and she's
Right.
bringing her knowledge of epigenetics and the what we understand nowadays about vibration, about frequency, and all of
Quantum
that stuff,
physics. Yeah.
which I deeply resonate with.
Right. Me
Um,
too.
we all understand that language does have frequency, and we know this from the Emoto water experiment. Where do you know his work? Yeah, so
Yes. Yes. With the crystallization. Yeah.
right. So this guy did some research where some water was given bad words, horrible words, and the water went all black. And when we use beautiful words and loving words, the water
Yeah.
transformed. And so your point earlier about the language we use, it might be a point of deconditioning, like you said, and it might be, and I always encourage as a one line investigation, self
Yeah.
examination, introspection. That's interesting. Am I judging this word? But also, your body is also a very good resource for you. If it contracts, perhaps that is not the language, because this is where I like to, as the mind
Mm,
martyr, I like, or the anarchist, I like to say, I don't need to be. Some people who follow human design are like, I can't do that because I'm a projector, because
right.
I can't do this. And it's a form of conditioning
It
because
is.
I know that I can do X, Y, and Z. I've got creativity. I can
Right.
operate on a different way. So the language can hold a frequency that doesn't sit with you. So after your investigation, notice, is it about transforming the way I perceive, because meaning is created through the
Right.
words and that is why Karen created the quantum human design, to upgrade the language for those of us who had already gone past that stage of needing to be shocked into high levels of consciousness, or being more authentic in on the way we operate.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like that's her purpose. I'm one of her students, and she even teaches us to like go through the gates yourself and kind of write your own language about the energy, especially the ones you have, because like you said, if the way I'm describing it feels limiting, it doesn't land with your body. There might be a different way to describe it, and that's more personal for you that you can really connect to. So
And
it's fine. It's all energy. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we're all trying to use words to describe something that you can't see, but you can feel, right?
mm,
And you can see the effects of the energy in a group of coworkers working together. You can watch it, observe it, but you can't really see the energy itself. I mean, quantum physics is just fascinating like that. But yet we're all affected by the decisions we make, the attitudes we're carrying, the words we're speaking, the feelings we're having about the words we're speaking and hearing. And so yeah, it's always good to become more aware. But I agree. I've kind of you can really tell the difference. Ra had the racks of right angle cross of the clarion, which is really like an alarm clock going off in your ear, right? And Karen is a 6-2 manifesting generator, and I can't remember her cross, but she has a much different, more nurturing, empowering, not so much waking you up, but like assuming you're awake and helping you take the next steps. So
mm.
yeah.
And something I was going to say in response to that, and that's it, and that's why it doesn't matter what aspect of human design you study. You've just hit the nail on the head. You are the leader. You are the person that needs to verify and experiment and embody and investigate in a very live way. It's not just work with this in an organic and lived way.
Right.
Oh, I noticed that I feel most happy when I'm spacious and able to deep dive and build my foundational knowledge in depth on this particular subject before I get asked. And I notice that I feel really nervous when I'm asked questions off the hop. Get to know yourself and use it as a system of experimentation
Yeah.
rather than taking information at face value.
Right. I just had an encounter with the line one with my son who's a 1-3 last week. He was taking a test to get to just see if he was ready for a course that that the homeschool co-op here offers in the fall. And anyway, it was a combination of his 1-3 energy, but also he has an open head in ajna. And I just want to tell you the story because I know you're going to find it um useful as well as hilarious. But he didn't answer like 15 of the questions on the test. And when I got him home, I was like, why didn't I mean, if they're wrong, if you left them blank, they're counted wrong now. Why did you leave those blank? And he said, well, the proctor said that if I wasn't sure to just skip it and come back, that's normal test taking advice, right? I mean, you've been an educator a long time. That's what we tell people, we tell kids. But for my open head with a 1-3, what he heard was, if you're not 99.9% sure that you can answer that question, then just skip it. And I'm like, no, no, no. She means if you're 50% sure you don't know the answer, you can skip it. Like if you're only 50% sure you can answer it, then you should try it and experiment with it and then see if you can figure it out. And if you can't, after 2 or 3 minutes, move on to the next question. And that is literally what she meant. But what she literally said was, if you are not sure, and in his open head said, I have to be 99.9% sure. And he's never that sure about anything because he has an open head. He's not even that sure what he wants to eat for lunch, right? So like being 85% sure is sure enough for someone with an open head and ajna. So anyway, and so when I explained to him what she really meant, he was like, oh, I could have answered a lot of those questions actually. I just didn't. And it made me just realize how there's again that's the funny part of the story. The conclusion of the story is that because of his line 1, he didn't feel prepared for the class. I didn't need the test to tell me that. He said, I do need to still work on some of these skills over the summer. I don't feel like I have that depth. And he didn't say it in those words exactly because he's 12, but he said, I don't feel ready for that class. I know that I could do it. I just don't feel ready. And so there's a difference so he's not saying I don't feel able. He's saying I don't feel prepared, which is a really line 1 thing to say. I don't feel like I have enough information to go into that class feeling like I've mastered what it takes, the ingredients to be successful in it. And so I'm like, it's cool. We'll just keep working at the pace we're working at. But it really speaks a lot to like how important needing that foundation is for like a secure foundation of information, at least before making a decision, is for a line 1 profile. So which brings me to, like, I guess a question for you with your education experience. How do we support and nurture the 1-3 child in an optimal way? If again, I kind of do a lot of it by trial and error, but what's some tips that you could give us from your experience in education about how to best support the 1-3 child?
Well, firstly, just from my own personal experience, my mum I was from quite a low socioeconomic background when I was growing up. And the one thing that my mum was super hot on was ensuring that I got into a very, very good school. And I thank her to this day because if a 1-3 is not educated effectively, they will suffer in life. Honestly, I mean, I will say with my open head, with some certainty, that it's quite likely they're going to suffer because, and I've got clients who haven't had that foundational education. So they haven't had a grounding in scholarship. They haven't been taught to develop effective note-making strategies. They haven't been taught how to develop critical thinking skills. So one of the things that I would teach parents is to allow them to follow, develop a culture of inquiry and a spirit of curiosity. Allow them to ask questions, and so teach them how to use Socratic questioning.
I love
Again,
that.
throughout my life, I was very lucky because, and this may not, I may not even be, maybe I don't know what I'm saying, because when I teach Knowing Your Client by Human Design, I talk about fractals and I talk about our nodal trajectory. And actually, all of my life, I have bumped into leaders and high quality mentors and teachers. I've had the best teachers my whole life. And my nodal, like my incarnation cross is the right angle cross of penetration 4, but my nodal trajectory is to be the teacher and the educator 45. So all my life I've been bumping into these people so I had high level adults around me as a child, no matter, even though we were quite poor, and anyway, it doesn't really matter the history so much, but I had really educated people around me, and poets and writers and creatives and critical thinkers who encouraged me to be a thinker myself. And so that was nurtured in my teachers at school. I used to bunk the third line. I used to leave school, I'd go around, smoke weed, do what I want, but there were certain lessons that I would never miss. And I would go into school when I wanted. I'd go to English, I'd go to history. These were lessons where I would be nurtured to be analytical and to think deeply and all of these things. So let's come back to the focus. So 1-3, the third line needs to learn through trial and error. We need to allow them to learn how to make mistakes. So how I used to, without even knowing my human design, my classroom was a culture of actually learning through mistakes. So I used to teach them to be learning detectives, reading detectives, and that was the one line, the investigator, never to take what I said as face value and to always question my authority in the terms of critical thinking. And I used to always promote the idea that they were scientists and that we were taking a scientific approach to learning about Shakespeare or reading or writing, experimentation. So making mistakes and teaching to fail, and that failure is actually the way that they're going to create in life, the way that they're going to succeed. That's fundamental. The art of some Socratic questioning, for those of you who don't know, go and just Google it. But Socratic questioning asks you to probe, to clarify, to really examine the thinking through a range of questions, which then leads me on to developing reflective practice. Now, again, because I was a teacher, it stood me in good stead being a 1-3, going into personal development, teaching healing and energy work and self-empowerment, because I actually already, and as a projector, they say, oh, projectors can't know themselves. Okay, to some extent, but because I have one lines are introspective, but because I had a grounding in what I call reflective practice, what have I learned? What has this experience taught me? How could I have improved? And and it's never with judgment. It's always out of curiosity. So having a structured reflective practice, 3 questions you could ask is, what have I learned? How did I learn it? When will I use this?
Who's the best resource to ask about this? That's one of my favorite questions. I mean, because sometimes, one of my sons we homeschool, and one of them will come to me with this opinion they saw on YouTube, and I'm like, is this the best person to ask their opinion of that? Is there someone that might have more information about it that would have a different opinion? Who's an authority about that? Because not all information out there on the interwebs is equal. So, but teaching them to discern too, is this person qualified to have that opinion, or is it just an opinion, which is fine. People are allowed to have whatever opinions they want, but is it qualified by research or data or some experience that helps them to know that that's an opinion that is valuable, that they can kind of rely on, basically.
But also their intuition. So it doesn't only have to be backed up by science or research, which is valuable, and especially in the academic realm and in life, but also intuitively. Like, we really want to get our young people using their body consciousness,
Hmm.
using their strategy and their authority to make decisions on discerning
Yeah,
information
that's so true.
as well. So having the balance of both,
Mhm.
because like for the one line, I actually say like now I did a degree, I've done loads of training, I've done huge amounts of training, but actually I'm at a stage in my life where I'm like, actually, I don't think the one line needs. I've never needed, no client needs certification, me to prove my certification to
Oh,
them,
sure.
because the one line is really about digging deep and finding the essence of an idea or of something. And so the
Hmm.
one line is very unlikely. The one line will attract and go out into the world and serve when they are ready. And they won't. They will hold back until they've got that foundation. So energetically, and we're moving into the realm of energetics, which is why I'm so excited about the YouTube channel that I'm going to create, because we're moving into a different time where we're not just going to be bombarded with AI, and I love AI. There's a place and a time for it. I also think that, I know I don't want to go off track, but I do think that AI is actually coming because we're moving into the intuition age. We're going to
Right,
stop relying on information recalling stuff and da da da. What that frees you up to just use your intuition.
right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel like this new generation of kids, like so my 12-year-old and younger, like they're very sensitive. They're much more sensitive to their inner workings than I was at their age, I feel like. And I don't know if that's nurture or nature, if they were just born that way, or if our environment, because we have that whole gentle parenting movement, and we have people just really tuning into their children in different ways than generations in the past. If it's a matter of nurturing more of that intuitive, but either way, I think it's a beautiful step in the right direction. I think kids are naturally more in touch. Well, listen, I believe they come out of the womb naturally more in touch with their intuition than we give them credit for. And they often know things we don't understand why they would know that at such a young age. And my youngest surprises me consistently by the things he knows. And I won't get too distracted explaining to you why I think he does that, but he's very insightful about things. And then my middle boy is he's has a good sense, a good feeling for the right timing of things. So I just think those are things. I don't know if it's just my awareness has changed or if they're really just more sensitive to the inner workings of the solar plexus and intuition than I was at that age. I remember just worrying about Barbies and worrying about My Little Ponies. I don't remember being all that clued into my intuition at 5 years old. Although maybe I was, like I said, I don't know. Anyway, um so taking us oh, I wanted to tag back to about supporting a 1-3. Another trick we use in our home with our 1-3 is that we have a pass to the library. He is allowed, indulged, and he can bring home 30 books a week if he wants. I have no limit on the amount of information he wants to get from, again, from quality sources. I definitely don't give them unrestricted time on YouTube. Not that YouTube isn't great. I mean, there's lots of good channels, like your channel is going to be amazing. There's lots of great information on YouTube, but there's also a lot of distractions. It's a little bit of an information overload sometimes. But yeah, we have a plethora of books in our house because I just want him to be able to read whatever is striking his fancy at the moment, and kind of do that deep dive and gain that information. So kind of to tag back into your work, how do we so we've talked about supporting the child, but then what does an aligned success really look like for a 1-3 adult? How do we know when we're doing that right? And before you answer that question, because the question itself reminded me of a comment I wanted to react to. One of the things you were sharing is like, I think educationally, just to round out the conversation about supporting the education of a 1-3 child, if they still maintain that level of curiosity that you were talking about throughout the entire educational journey, I think that's our sign we're doing well with a 1-3. That they're still curious, they're still interested, they haven't lost their lust for learning. And I think that's how we can tell. But anyway, so what does a 1-3 aligned adult look like then?
Just touch on that though. I think what
Sure.
we find as well in a lot of education is that the 1-3 doesn't really come into their own until they're an adult because they haven't had a good quality education or they've not been allowed to be curious about the things that they want to learn about, and they've maybe kind of not really, they might still have some of the qualities of the 1 and the 3, but it may have played out in different ways. But
Sure.
anyway, the point, so
So
they
you
might
think you
find that
agree
they,
with the curiosity thing, that if they still leave the system curious to learn something and, hungry to learn something deeply, that's a sign that they're still not overly deficient yet.
oh, but that's a sign of a good education, and that's one of the things
Yes,
that I actually used to say. And when I was talking about education a lot in my work, I would actually say if a child is curious when they've left education, this is a great sign. But if a child
yeah,
is not curious when they've left education, this
I
is a
agree.
sign of very poor quality education.
Right.
But so the 1-3 adult, and this leads into the work that I do in aligned business for aligned business, aligned messaging, aligned content, aligned marketing. So the 1-3 is pretty self-absorbed. So we need a lot of spaciousness. We're not for a 1-3 in an aligned business as a solopreneur, really that 1-3 wants to go away. They want to investigate, they want to create their things, they want to go on YouTube. And I can't be, unless I've got your chart, I can't make specific comments, but let's just look at it from a profile perspective. The 1-3 isn't really going to go out and network as much as perhaps a 4 line or other lines. But they need to position themselves as a thought leader and an authority. So they really need to want to lean into that, whether they write books, whether they do a podcast, whether they do a YouTube channel, where they can really shine, and that's where they become magnetic. It's like bees
Mhm.
to a honey, people, or bees to a flower. People will find you because you're there in your power, in your authority, in your expertise, teaching, showing up, and that is very aligned for you. And that is going to give you success and fulfillment because people are coming to you because they're going to hang off your every word, because they trust you, because you're an authority, because you've had that ground in that area of, or that sphere that you're interested in.
Yeah.
The 1-3 and the 1 line in particular needs to be self-sufficient. So we need to make our own money. We need to be really financially independent. Work alone. We probably try to work in corporations, and unless you're leading that thing, you're quite likely going to want to be working as an entrepreneur. The 1 line is very entrepreneurial,
Hmm.
very independent. So aligned success is probably a 1-3 who actually, I live this, wakes up whenever they want, has spaciousness to do whatever they want, to follow and create and learn about how uninterrupted whatever they want, and then create and share when they feel like it. So that's a really aligned business for, or aligned lifestyle for the 1-3. And I want to mention here as well,
I'm grinning because you're like, I feel like you're describing my oldest son. Very
yeah,
entrepreneurial. He wrote a book recently. I'm sorry, I'm going to give a shameless plug, but it's about
yeah,
he's fascinated with animals, so he wrote a book. It's on Amazon about pangolins, and all of the proceeds go to help the Pangolin Research Fund. But he wanted to increase awareness to the world about, like why are these animals endangered? And anyway, so it's funny. I just want to tell you, I started grinning while you were talking because I think he was 5.5 the first time he and I disagreed about an animal fact. And I looked it up and he was right and I was wrong. And I decided at that moment to treat him as the authority on animal facts in our house. And he started blossoming after that. I mean, just
mm,
blossoming in his leadership in all kinds of other ways. And so I think there's some key connection. He's not the boss of our house, like he's not the final say about all the things. But he is, if there's a discussion around the dinner table about an animal fact and he says, no, they're purple with pink spots, then we kind of all lift. And it's a huge responsibility because sometimes he's prone to just giving an answer because people expect him to have one. But he's learned to just like sometimes say, I'll look it up. I'll look it up. Research that for you guys. I'll look it up. But he 99% of the time knows it. okay, that's
Mm,
a loose fact, but but anyway, he generally knows the final answer on the animal facts. And so we've all kind of adopted this, like he's the authority about it. So, and it's funny for his birthday parties, he likes to set up trivia games for his friends about animal facts and Pokemon, because he finds that really fun. So anyway,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I was grinning and I just want to make sure you knew I wasn't, like just staring off into space or something. I'm totally resonating with everything you're saying. It's
No, that's fine. With the third line, I think it's important we are innovators, we are
Mhm.
pioneers, we do need that space. And the 1-3, so right now, over the last 6 years, I walked away from education. I had a spiritual awakening. I actually gave away all my possessions
Mhm.
and just started to follow my intuition. So I had a big pull from a 1 line, from being at the top of my game to suddenly having to start, well, seemingly not true, but seemingly start again building
Sure.
human design knowledge, building gene keys knowledge, building energetics, co-creation, metaphysics, da da da. And so, but now it's like after 6 years, I see, and building a business and copying content and going and seeing how actually this was all relevant to the higher purpose and the Dharma path. But so that leads me on to saying that the one line and perhaps the 1-3 needs patience
Mhm.
to build their expertise and build. And I think it's really important to say as well, when we're not in an aligned situation, so teaching was aligned, but having to live with somebody else's deadlines and timeline and goals and this and that was very misaligned. So after 7 years in mainstream education, that's when I had to leave. And obviously being a projector and um, open sacral, and there's all these other things to do with it. But what was unbalanced was, for me at that time, was this, because of the deep fear and insecurity of perhaps not knowing, we see a shadow side of the 1 line who can have imposter syndrome. And what that led me to do was work 100-hour weeks to prove my
Right.
worth, to make sure I knew, to, and constant curriculum changes, different assessments, new governments, new policies, and having to learn all the time. That, even though teaching was, I was fantastic and passionate and mastered pedagogy and created my own thing, if you're not in alignment with the rest of your design and living in a and work being able to work in a job in a way that you can express your expertise and your knowledge in a more aligned way for you, this is why I help people to come out of force and into flow, like,
Right.
and how to restructure their lives or their businesses so that they can move out of the hustle and into how could we live in our profile and embody that and be highly paid and enjoy life in a way that is in alignment for us. Because with the unbalanced expression of that 1 line, they will over prepare, they will perhaps postpone.
Mhm.
Like, so many times I've postponed opportunities. I didn't know enough about human design. I know fucking so much about human design. I could transform lives in that time. But until the 1 line feels it,
Right.
and they will postpone. So look at the shadow, look at that, where that might be holding you back. And I want to give a gem here and a nugget, that one of the things I've found about living in alignment and being an aligned and optimally balanced 1 line is that now all I need to do is program my subconscious and say, I choose the end result of producing a series on um, profiles, and
Yeah.
suddenly, and when I release that, the information just flows to me. Or I might get an intuitive idea to look into
That's
something,
brilliant.
produce something, and suddenly I get a call that says, "Hey, can I book in for this specific, unique bit of information,
Yep.
niche?" Like, I was just studying that. So as you become aligned,
That's beautiful. That's a
yeah, yeah, and so you like check yourself as the 1-3.
sure.
Where are
Like
you ever? Yeah.
so,
I was
kind of
just
like setting your own curriculum. Like, okay, this is the next thing I want to learn about, and suddenly you're attracting to you experiences that either help you show yourself what you already know about it, like client asking you for a session. Because obviously, if someone's inviting you, especially as a projector, if someone's inviting you for your opinion, somewhere they got the impression you would have a good answer for that if you're a
yeah,
line one for sure.
yeah,
So then I just love that. I'm like giggling because I'm like, what a great, so the universe either brings you an opportunity to show yourself what you already know, kind of like a semester test or like a report, right? You're now sharing, or gives you a class or an opportunity to pick up some new information that you need to know to be a master and expert in that particular question.
That
So
happens too,
cool.
or it just drops what you need. So like when I
Yeah,
was, do you remember when I was creating the Know Your Ideal Client? So I got the insight to do the Know Your Ideal Client, and then suddenly I was doing selling from the centers, and suddenly I built the whole fractal formula, the fractal content framework formula. So
right,
that's on the back burner, but it all came because I was doing that, and suddenly all the information and all these
right.
insights and downloads, and so that's an aligned one line. And I will say, even before today's podcast, I found myself doing my shadow, which is this. I was like writing all these, I was like, okay, I
I
need to just
love
remember,
it.
I need
Thank
to
you
write
for
everything I know about being a 1-3. And I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, I don't really know. And so it doesn't need to be like that. You can ground and you can just show up
yeah.
and know what you need to know. And so, yeah, just be
Wait a
aware.
minute though, but I isn't that I mean I do believe even I mean because even just with my son, like it does help to reduce the anxiety about something to make those little sticky notes or the cards of just getting out of your head and onto paper in a concrete fashion. What
Yeah.
do I already know about this? And that I guess that's a tip I would give any person, any parent out there. If you're listening to this and you homeschool or you listen to this podcast and your kids go to public school, it doesn't matter. One of the best things you can do to support a 1-3 child with their homework is to say, tell me what you already know about this question before you try helping them solve it. Help them get really lean into that line one. I know a lot actually about the subject of quantum physics or about the subject of pangolins and get a good grasp for what they already know rather than
Mhm.
rushing into solution or help them figure out the process. The process isn't always the problem with a one line. Sometimes the problem is actually a lack of confidence that I
Mm.
do have the resources to answer this question effectively. And and like you said, so sometimes that's the only thing I do for my son to help him get to the point where he can say, yes, I can answer this question is just go, tell me what you already know about it. Teach me because I
Yeah.
haven't been studying this with you.
Yeah.
And then
And
suddenly, the more he shares, the more he's like, oh, I've got this. I've got this. I totally got this.
yeah, really, really important and powerful takeaway for anyone, any parent or any teacher watching that. Like, ask them the questions, and because when they start to see the evidence and start to talk on it, and they see that they know a lot, that confidence skyrockets. And actually, I wrote down here one of the things that I used to do as a practitioner when I was teaching, and I think that we should all be doing this. It doesn't matter whether you're one line or not. Get We all learn better when we teach. So all getting a one-line child to teach part of a lesson or research and teach part of a lesson or part of an idea is really powerful as well because
Yes.
yeah. But just finally, in terms of like marketing, you understanding your role, understanding the characteristics and how to position yourself and really lean into that is helpful. Understanding yourself as a 1-3, the type of content that you create. So you could be creating case studies, you could
Yeah.
be creating showing like how you've experimented. And again, it's going to how we really give you a unique marketing blueprint on your is going to we're going to take into account your throat activations, we're going to take into account your whole chart, and certain
Right.
activations, and that's going to tell us whether you are very, very adept at storytelling or that you should really leverage this or that. So but the point is you can learn a huge amount about your role, about the impact you're here to have, about how you can show up and position yourself in a way that is magnetic, and starts to just bring your people to you.
It's so beautiful. Okay, if you have time for one more question, I have one more question about, and it's interesting because my son's, you're a 1-3 splenic projector. My son is a 1-3 pure generator, but he has a lot of definition in the spleen. And when you were talking about that imposter syndrome, I didn't realize that was pretty common with line ones, but I knew it was part of some of the spleen definition. So anyway, the question is, if we had a time machine and you could go back and tell your parents like one thing about your design as a 1-3 splenic projector or just as a 1-3 in general,
Mm.
what would you, yeah, again, this is kind of it's again about how to support the 1-3, but I wonder what you would say. What's the most important thing that maybe they could have done differently, or celebrating what they did well but didn't realize it was didn't know human design, they just did it and it worked really good. I don't know. What do you think?
What's really interesting, I'm going to answer the question, but I think what's just dropped into my mind is that I actually want to invert it and say, how can we help the parent with the 1-3? Because
There you go.
that parent may feel like they want to wrap that child in cotton wool and try and protect them for every eventual outcome. And the child is going to make mistakes. They
Yeah.
have to go into the fire. Like, you cannot tell a 1-3, oh, there's fire, don't touch the cooker. The 1-3 has to put their hand on it and get that burn and go, oh, okay. It's the way that we learn. So the poor parent, that's number one. Like, can you find your peace and allowing your child to make mistakes and being there as a somebody who can not judge them and just be a piece for them, someone who they can come back to and say, I really messed this up, and but this is what I've learned, and allow them to reduce the shame, because there's a lot of shame for a third line, and to increase their resilience, because the third line is, and that's where the poor old 6 line, they go through all this experimentation, but they don't have the same bounce back that third line does, because the quality, the attribute of that third line is, oh, okay, painful, but what how can we make this better, or because they're here to adapt. It's built into us, we're really, really resilient. So what did my mum do really, really well? Well, what could you do well? She got me the best education that she could. So I had really high quality education, and she did nurture my curiosity. So there was a lot of freedom to make mistakes, to go my own way. I left home at 17. There was a lot of allowing me to find my own way, and that stood me in good stead, really. And
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that about parents too, because there is a certain amount of self-regulation that happens in order to allow a line 3 to really experiment with their life, and I'm just speaking again from experience, but um it's heartbreaking to, especially for projector moms. I'm going to speak to projector moms especially, because you can kind of see that decision isn't going to work out well from like before they even really formulated the commitment to the decision, right? You're projecting into, you can see the system, you can see the A plus B equals C, and you don't like C. And so it is really tempting to say, to insert influence and say, no, I don't, what if we tried this instead? But at a certain point, the reality of learning the lesson from the experiment, and I say that loosely, the choices, right? The line 3 is experimenting with life choices, and the reality is they can't really internalize the lesson if the decision itself wasn't theirs. It's not their experiment, then it's your experiment. And if your experiment is confirmation bias, like, I already know this is going to work out, so do it my way, then they're not learning anything, and you're not actually teaching anything. You're just confirming a bias you already had about that decision, which may be grounded in a lot of experiential wisdom. Don't get me wrong. But the fact of the matter is it's nearly impossible for the child to internalize the lesson from your wisdom that you've acquired through your hard choices in life. There's just no way. And it is hard, though, because we love them. We want to protect them. We really just want them to have a better life than we had, and I think that's natural for parents, but it's hard, especially as they get, a little more independence because of that age, moving into the teenage years, and really being able to make decisions away from you without your counsel at all, and come back and say, hey, I messed up while I was out with my friends, and this is what I did. And yeah, we have to make a decision, really. Do we want to be right at that point, or do we want to be the person that they can feel comfortable talking to, so you can know what's going on? It's hard, but anyway, yeah, we could do a whole series about teenagers too, I suppose.
Yeah, we
But I
could.
appreciate you saying that too. And when I don't ask that question to like put down parents, I just think, wow, there's things that like, there's some things that as a child, I spent lots of time alone. And my brother and I are both non-sacral beings. He's a manifestor and I'm a projector. And I used to really resent the sheer volume of hours we spent as latchkey kids. But now that I know my design, it actually was really in both of our best interests. My mom was a manifesting generator, and she passed away a few years ago, so got, many blessings on her memory. But like I remember being resentful as a child about that and how I felt so burdened by being responsible for this little brother. But now I'm like, that probably was the best thing for both of our energy fields to help us really get in touch with who we are as non-sacral beings, because we were being conditioned by the, being around generators all day in the school system. So we'd come home and have like 3 or 4 hours where we weren't being pushed to do something and we could just follow our fancies. So
Nice.
but
I think on a final note as well, in terms of like that was a positive thing
yeah.
with no with like education, curiosity, for giving the freedom to learn. I think the worst thing that you can do, and this some of this was the case with my poor old mum. She's here. She's not in the room, but it's creating like just around little silly little things like making something, making some food, and you want to experiment with new flavors, and then she'll be like, oh no, don't do that, or oh, that was the worst piece of salmon that you ever made, or whatever. You start to fear, you do get, if they're really controlling about how something should be done, it starts to stifle the creativity and you start to fear getting it wrong. And so yeah, try not to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a look at that because I do think I mean, he's a firstborn son, so I'll take a look at that. Thank you for mentioning that. I don't know that I feel like I've gotten better with it, but there's always room for improvement. And then maybe that's the real reason why he didn't try a little harder at that test. Maybe he was afraid of getting the answers wrong. So there might be something to that since I shared that story already.
Mm.
So okay, so tell us how people can find you if they want to learn more or get to a reading with you. I know you're doing readings for people with.
At the moment, I mean, there's multiple offers that I do and ways that
Mhm,
I work with people.
mhm,
I have the HD Business Blueprint, which is about building your business in alignment with your design. I do one-to-one mentorship on actually just aligning with your design and stepping into your power and your soul destiny pathway and moving out of force into flow, really working with co-creation and how you create using your design. But based on the series that we're doing, I would love for as many of you to book in for how to embody and leverage your profile in either business, marketing, or life. So we get a 60-minute session. They're £333. You can book in via my DM on the HD Business Blueprint on Instagram, or you can just find me on Facebook, Jessica Ann, add my profile and reach out via Messenger. A lot of my work, a lot of my sales is through the DMs, through conversations, people reaching out from YouTube. So however you want to find me, the key place is the HD Business Blueprint or Jessica Ann, and you can probably find me through Sasha if people do that for you
yeah.
on Facebook. And book in for a specific around profile, because what I find is that people learn a lot of information, but they don't then zoom in and do
Right.
the application and the embodiment work. If you focus on profile and really zoom in, you get some self-inquiry questions, you get practical ways of working with it and experimenting with it in
Right.
your marketing, in your content, in your life, in your relationships, in your learning. It's very, very powerful to have that focus. And guess what, by the way, gate 9 is my Jupiter, which is where focus goes and flows. And so
Yeah.
a lot of what I get to give people is the ability to focus and zoom in on what's important and then apply that and have transformation in a very real way. So I'm really excited about focusing on the profiles and doing those readings, but there's many ways you can work with me.
That's wonderful. And I will make sure and put all that in the show notes on the podcast and also in the notes on the YouTube channel. That sounds great. And then for any parents listening, I right now my best foundational place to start, especially if you're a 1-3 parent or have a 1-3 child, is I have a course called Understanding Your Child's Human Design. It's a audio course. It's self-paced because we don't all integrate information at the same speed. And I'm available for lots of questions inside that course. But it's basically an email course. It's $44. It's like one of the best investments you can make in your relationship with your child. And it's on my website, www.sashaclark.com. And I'm so glad that we're starting the series together. I think our next episode is going to be about the 6'2", just because I'm a 6'2", and then we'll kind of branch out into the other profiles, and this is going to be so fun. I'm so excited. Yeah, like you said, I think sometimes we get kind of lost in the weeds of human design and forget to really dive into those fundamentals. The sun placement in our chart is like 70% of our energy, and profiles dictated off of the sun placement. So like this is really kind of where the rubber hits the road for a lot of people, but we overlook it because it's just one little blip on this whole page of lots of numbers and colors and lines and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. I think it'll be really, I hope it's helpful to those that are listening. And I just think it's beautiful information. And it's always so fun to get my inner nerd out and play with you. I love talking human design with you. It's so fun.
And if there is a way for people to email you or post in questions, I would love for us to gather over these 12 series. In our final, we'll do a 13th, lucky 13, and we'll answer your questions. We'll answer some of the questions.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm also on Instagram at Sasha1. It'll be in the notes, and you can, please do. Anyone that, if you come up with questions from watching any of these episodes or listening to any of them, we'll do a special dedicated Q&A session at the end, Lucky 13. And so feel free to submit some questions in the DMs to Jess or to Jessica or to myself, and we will pick some great questions to answer at the last session. It'll be fun. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you soon. All the best. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.